Hello and welcome back. I'm some guy, and today we're going to be talking about South Park post COVID, the made for TV movie. And I know some of you might not have watched the movie, so I'm just going to skate around everything, just get my point across without any spoilers. So I'll try not to spoil too much. So what piques my interest with regards to this movie is how it tackles the issue that is on most people's minds. That's the issue of, or the question that are we going to reach a stage where we can say we are post COVID? If we look back in history, there are some pandemics that happened. Most famously, the Black Death, the Spanish flu, and HIV. And of those three, the Black Death, um, it sort of died down. There are episodes of the plague here and there, but no major outbreaks like what happened back in medieval times. Let's jump on to the Spanish flu. It decimated Europe, it decimated the whole globe. Millions of people died. But we are now officially post Spanish flu. Then let's talk about HIV. So HIV was a global problem, and it wasn't at the scale of COVID and all of this because its mode of transmission was sexual and via fluids, bodily fluids, blood, and all of that. So it was really easy to protect yourself from HIV. Even though we are not post HIV, we have medications, we have positive living, we have ways to protect ourselves from HIV that basically work wonders. As someone who comes from a place where HIV is really prevalent, I can say it's very hard to catch HIV. I personally have been like exposed to it several times. I got tested and came out clean. Um, so South Park tackles this question that's on everybody's mind. Are we ever going to be post-COVID? The situation doesn't look too good. There's this variant that was just discovered from Southern Africa, and right now Southern African countries are facing major travel restrictions because of that new variant. Um, More booster jabs are coming. Most of us thought that, well, with people being double vaxxed and getting the booster shots, we might be turning a corner. But it seems as if we might even be in a situation where we'll see even more lockdowns. We might be in a situation where we could see even more deaths. And it's been like 2 years now since we've been living in with this pandemic. There are children who were 2 years old or 3 years old when this global pandemic hit. They don't remember much from the pre-COVID world, and they're starting school next year, and they don't know what a pre-COVID world was like. They think face masks, social distancing is how the world works, and it's quite hard. It has been a difficult time, and now looking into the future, we might have another year or two living with this thing, living with the restrictions and all of that. I am forever grateful for those who developed the vaccines and those who are doing their best to keep this thing contained. But at the same time, I harbor the anxiety: are we ever going to turn a corner? Are we ever going to live in a post-COVID world? And South Park answers this in the only way South Park can, with humor and absurdity. So we open up with the favorites: Eric Cartman, Stan, Kyle, and Kenny. We also have as a detective now. in this movie they are all grown up. It's 40 years later, they're living their lives, and they've grown into their own men. And that's what I found most profound. They turned out quite differently and not as you would have expected. Like, for example, the rich boy token ended up being a cop. I think maybe being rich afforded him the luxury of really choosing something he was passionate about, since he could be anything because his parents were basically rich. He could have been an artist, he could have been a lawyer, whatever, but he chose to be a cop. And even though it was not explicitly mentioned, as a black person, I was thinking maybe he became a cop, a detective, to change the police institution from within. But that's just my take on it. We have Stan. Well, I was really intrigued and disappointed at the same time at the way Stan turned out. He was out of shape. He was an alcoholic. He was living with his virtual girlfriend, and they were always constantly bickering. His life mirrors the life that his own parents had. It mirrors his parents' marriage, his relationship with his virtual girlfriend. It mirrors his parents' relationship. But he was even worse than Randy, because Randy was successful in certain areas. For example, Randy was a scientist, he was a good geologist, he was a good musician. We all know he is Lord. Yeah, yeah, yeah. He was also a successful businessman, a successful farmer. So Randy did a lot with his life. But Stan, he was just a whiskey blogger, which seemed to pay the bills, but he didn't seem to be too happy. He was just depressed and basically mad at the world. And we get to learn in the movie, it's because his family had faced a certain disaster. For the sake of not spoiling too much, I'm not going to delve into that, alright? Then we have Kyle. So Kyle also was all grown like his friends. He was some kind of tech pro. Maybe he had a startup. It's really not explicitly mentioned, or at least I didn't quite catch it. At least he was in shape. He was, nicely dressed and all of that. But for some reason, he was mad at his best friend, or his old best friend Stan. Kenny turned out to be the most successful of the bunch. He was a celebrated scientist, astronaut, basically a modern equivalent of Einstein himself. He had managed to invent time travel. He was going back to the past to discover where COVID came from and possibly, alter the course of history so that it wouldn't exist in the first place. So Kenny really turned out magnificent, and I like the way they portrayed his character. He had a nice blonde beard, and he was just a kind of chilled dude. He was a bros bro, and he was basically beloved and celebrated throughout the world, really. And then we have Eric Cartman, who seemed to have the greatest transformation. He was now a rabbi, believe it or not. Cartman, the anti-Semite. Cartman, the same guy who made Scott Turnerman eat his parents in a chili. The same guy who convinced Butters that the world ended. The same guy in the Mel Gibson episode who tried to raise an anti-Semitic mob was now a rabbi, happily married with 3 kids and a beautiful wife. Much to the chagrin of Kyle and Stan, who thought he was just doing it to get a rise out of Kyle. Of which he answered, "Do you think I would live 40 years of my life just to piss you off? In a way, just to piss you off?" Knowing Cartman, he was a really devious, or is a really devious kind of dude. But it's hard to believe that he could dedicate so much of his life towards just pissing off Kyle. And even if he did, um, I think he inadvertently found joy, peace, and meaning in his life through that. And he seems to be the most fulfilled of the bunch. You know, Kyle and Stan, they were basically just depressed. Um, Cartman and Kenny, they were living their best lives. And we're also introduced to a grown Jimmy who now ran a politically correct talk show, and he was still up to his old tricks. Sam Jimmy, you know, just a little bit grown up. And in the future, people were now more considerate, and the jokes were straight up PC. And I know most people say they were lame and whatever, but I found it very funny. Um, yeah, so basically, that's the cast. All grown up. It's quite nice to see them grown up. It's a good perspective. They really shook things up with this movie. The last time they tried to, do something that big was when they introduced serialization with the Turgiddy storyline, the Misty Garrison as president, PC principal, all of that, which I think was hit and miss. But with this movie, they hit the nail on the head. I recommend it. If you haven't watched it, do so. It's hella fun. I could have delved into more detail, but I don't want to spoil it for you. Please do go watch it. It's streaming on Paramount. I know not another subscription, but it is what it is. If you're a big time South Park fan like me, you wouldn't mind paying an extra £10 for another subscription. Alright, that's really all for today. Like, share the video, and subscribe. And also comment just to tickle the algorithm. This has been some guy. Peace.